Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this Saturday morning at the Art Clinic Online. We're here with Reem Bassous. Is that how I'm saying it right? Bassous? Bassous.
Bassous,
Sorry,
yeah.
my bad. And our host, Lindsay Mueller, who did a fantastic Art Clinic Online for us. I'd have to go back and see how far back that was. But again, you can see all of our past Art Clinic Online presentations via the new webpage, which I've spent more hours designing that thing than I care to admit, but it is not my first love of life. So take it or leave it. But I think it looks pretty great, and I hope it's easy to navigate for everybody. And we are grateful for the support of so many organizations, in particular the Luger Fellowship. Thank you, Ellen, for giving us the funds to actually build that web page, along with paying for so many of our artists' presentations. So we're actually going back 4 years, 4.5 years of presentations at this point. So we're very excited that our program has grown the way it has. But without further ado, I'm actually going to pass the torch to Lindsay, and she can introduce our artist this morning.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, thank you all for being here today. I know I'm really excited to learn more about Reem's practice. So I first met Reem in not super long ago, like in 2024, I think in the summer. I'd heard about you before that, but I think our paths didn't quite cross. I met Reem through a friend who was teaching and had taken classes at the Washington Studio School. So for those of you that don't know, Reem is the artistic director at WSS. As she mentioned, they have an event tonight too. So Reem's a busy woman, um, but so I now teach at the Washington Studio School. But I remember first getting to meet Reem and discuss like my practice, her practice a bit, like our teaching strategies. And I mean, Reem is just like a wealth of information in many categories. And so it's been a real joy knowing her the last two years or so. Um, I like just briefly about Reem because she's going to talk about herself as well. But Reem is a Lebanese artist, American artist who, well, as you were talking about with Mariana, you lived in Greece previously, but I feel like most recently you spent a good chunk of your life living in Hawaii and you have like a rich history there. Reem was also a college professor there. So as well as a long artistic background, I feel like you have a strong educational background as well. But Reem relocated to DC, which she had previously lived in DC as a student at GW and then initially teaching at WSS like years ago. And then recently-ish came back to DC about like 4 years ago, I think, to be the director at WSS. Reem's recently had I'm hoping you're going to talk about the big paintings, recently had some cool exhibitions, this one in Seattle. I mean, I really enjoy seeing Reem's work and that I've gotten to be in her studio a handful of times seeing these large paintings in process. And I really enjoy the layered nature of them. I think as a person who in painting really enjoys like surprises and moments of overlap and like unexpectedness, being unable to always tell like what's on the surface. Like there's some level of surprise and ambiguity there. And I think I really enjoy that in Reem's work, but also the way that she uses color. I feel like you make very structured paintings. Like so even when there's like chaos happening in them, there will be like these underlying structures that emerge. Um, and yeah, and I'm curious to hear more today about, I feel like you use symbols in your work, and that's not something we've talked about a ton. So I'm hope to hear a little bit more about that. And just, yeah, I feel like your large paintings, especially, it's such a physical process of layering. But Reem, of course, has other work, smaller works as well. I really enjoy your silkscreen prints and like the drawing back into them. So I'm hoping you guys will have visuals for all of these soon. But I just wanted to introduce a few things that why I was really compelled to have Reem here talking about her work today.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, and thank you, Jordan, for having me. I'm going to talk about my work in the context of history, and also will show some influences and some references that feed the work. So I will share my screen. So I'm starting with a map from a book called The Bassous Family Chronicles, which takes our history back to the 1700s, and it traces us all the way from Turkey to Greece and eventually into Palestine and then Lebanon. And so I just feel very, very lucky to have this archive to reference. And also, when I did my DNA test, I can confirm that I am a super Arab on many layers. I am also 5% Spanish or Italian. They're not sure yet, but I will take you through some historical milestones in the Arab world. And I thought that not many people probably know that there was a flag of the Arab Revolt that was designed by British diplomat Mark Sykes to create a sense of pan-Arabism post the Ottoman Empire after World War One. And so pan-Arabism was an idea that many people have played with, thought about, but it didn't ultimately work out, much to our detriment, in my opinion. The flag of Lebanon is on the right. It does not have the black stripe in it. And it symbolizes, the red symbolizes the blood of our martyrs, the white, better times of peace. And then what a lot of people refer to as the Christmas tree is the cedar of Lebanon, of course. So taking you back to 1973, this is downtown Beirut, and this was the hotel district and the Riviera, and my mother currently lives right here. So she has this little. It's a gem of an apartment, and it's very close to the American University of Beirut, which is that green patch here, and that's still intact. But much of this area was heavily demolished during the war. And so here we have alternative views from the sea, again, downtown Beirut. And then, you see the iconic Holiday Inn here and here, which to this day stands in ruins because there's a great dispute over completely demolishing it and rebuilding it. There's a lot of red tape. The Beirut harbor, of course, and we will come full circle to that with the Beirut port explosion a little later. And then this is Beirut in 1982 on the right. And this is the very same downtown area that I showed you. And then the green line, which was a dividing line between East and West Beirut. I was born in 1978, and I was only 5 days old when my parents flew me to Greece, where I lived until the age of 5. And so when I returned to Beirut as a 5-year-old, I remember thinking, this is so ugly. As a child, as such a visual person, I was so affected by the ruins, really. I mean, it was a big shock for me. The green line is called that because the demarcation was a buffer zone that was overgrown by hashish, which is, the Lebanese version of weed. And so it was green. And so Lebanon has very fertile soil, and that is something that, if left untended, would take over the city. This is the green line, as you can see. East Beirut was predominantly Christian. West Beirut was predominantly Muslim, although downtown Beirut, right here, is actually a huge mix of religions. And my mother's family, which is Protestant, hails from downtown Beirut, or they lived there the majority of their lives. Their ancestral village is in South Lebanon, which is under threat of occupation right now. Um, and my mom's family is kind of like the United Nations. We have 4 or 5 religions. We have over 10 nationalities in the family. And so it's a very, very eclectic group of people. But in order to get from East Beirut to West Beirut, which, if we think of today, for example, my brother lives in what was East Beirut, and my mom lives in downtown Beirut, and it's a 15-minute drive, more or less, without traffic. Back then, in order for us, when I went back to Beirut, I lived in East Beirut, and in order for us to visit my grandfather in West Beirut, we had to drive all around the country to go south of the Green Line and then up to downtown Beirut, because in order to get from east to west, you would have to cross on foot through the buffer zone, and that was an area that snipers basically lived in. I have a lot of friends who have lost parents crossing from east to west. And the east side of the border was manned by the Lebanese military, but Christian members of the military. And the west was manned by Muslim military. They were not fighting against each other, just to be clear. This was a war of militias during the civil war in Lebanon. And the Civil War lasted for 15 years, from 1975 to 1990. And it was a war among religious factions, a sectarian war, but it was also a war, what we Lebanese often call the War of Others. Syria invaded, Israel invaded, and at one point, Syria and Israel were fighting each other on Lebanese soil. And so there was a lot happening that had nothing to do with the Lebanese military. The Lebanese military has historically been weakened by the West because they do not want a strong military power north of Israel. And so when people, ignorantly say, well, the Lebanese army should get rid of Hezbollah, there's a lot that they're missing, a lot of information that they're missing there. This is one of my pieces titled Green Line, and directly from memory that I did in 2012. And it was first exhibited actually here in DC in 2013. This was done on 300-pound watercolor paper that was bent and formed into semi-three-dimensional works. And so to give you a sense of scale, each building, the larger buildings are roughly 22 by 30 inches. They go through an extensive process of very structural drawing, ink staining, then a little bit of shellac, then coffee, a lot of coffee poured onto them. If they fit in the oven, those that fit will go into the oven at low temperature for a while. And then the final step is fireworks, because it only makes sense to use gunpowder in these situations. And so again, here we see the demarcation line on the left. And to give you a sense of scale, this is Lebanon right here. It is roughly the size of Delaware and Rhode Island combined. yet it has a population of 4.2 million Lebanese, not including any of our refugee groups, which are almost another 2 million added. So we still have Syrian refugees, and we do have Palestinian refugees that have been in Lebanon since the 1948 Nakba. So there was a large culture of amnesia after the Civil War ended. And so the writer Sun Hogbo, who's Danish, wrote this excellent book called War and Memory in Lebanon. And this is a quote from him. The dominant trend in post-conflict resolution has been to establish recognition before reconciliation. A sense of justice must be restored to citizens who suffered injustice from state or non-state actors. And of course, here he is referring to the fact that as a country, in order for it to heal, they must collectively remember and address what happened. And you see a successful example of that with my limited knowledge about it in Croatia, for example, which was a comparable war to us. And so that did not happen in Lebanon. In Lebanon, national specifics challenged that model. Warlords were granted amnesty and were reinstated as politicians in the post-war government. A broadcasting law was passed in 1994 against any matter seeking to bring up any issues that inflamed the 15-year war, including religious or sectarian debates. It remained in effect until 2005. All this contributed to a state of collective amnesia, and they mandated that certain programs be given more airtime than others. So a lot of celebrity culture and a lot of music shows, and so they successfully brainwashed Lebanese people into not thinking about politics for a good chunk of time. So one of the things that I consider a pivotal moment in my work was 1990. It was Wednesday, April 18th. Of course, we didn't have electricity at the time, so every night to watch the news, my father would turn on a small generator, and we would watch the news on a small black and white TV. And I saw this footage of this very specific school bus that was ravaged by a rifle-fired grenade, which immediately set the school bus on fire and all 17 kids that were in it. And I remember thinking to myself, this could have been me. I just saw myself in these kids, and that event really stuck with me. So many years later, I went back to Lebanon, to the archives of a specific newspaper, and I bought the copyrights for these images because it was something that was etched in my mind, and I wanted to be able to use the images. And so I'm showing you the image that doesn't have the children in it, but I have the entire folder. And I don't think it does anyone any good to show dead bodies. I think that we have auditioned our dead plenty, and so there's no need for that. This series then was informed by the school bus. So these are studies, they're all self-portraits. And I did about 200 of these, and this is a small selection of that whole body. And I started working on these self-portraits as me being a stand-in for these kids. And this was when I was in grad school. And after resisting working on anything related to the war, my graduate professor, Tom Brown, basically said, you know, this is who you are. This is a big part of who you are. Why are you not working on it? And it was me delaying the inevitable. And so I just started working on these portraits. And as the series progressed, the images became a little bit more faceless, like the one on the right. And then ultimately led to this 6 by 7 foot painting that had a total of 70 portraits in it. And it was a total abstraction, of course, but this happened to coincide. The completion of this painting happened to coincide with September 11th, and I remember um, people telling me that it just had this heaviness of people being trapped, and I think it everything feeds us when we're working in the studio. So fast forward to 2006, because between 2002 and 2006, I stopped working on war-related paintings. I was deep into experimenting with, you know, dead trees and dead, shrubbery. And so but of course, there was the July war with Israel in 2006. And so I had just moved to Honolulu in August of 2006, my very first night there. In the morning, I got the paper, and this was the image that I saw of a suburb in South Beirut that was completely demolished. And so I took that image, and this is an ink stain on the original. You can see how much I've referenced it. And I started working from it. And so this was something that was a very quick first sketch. And my titles are very ironic, you will notice. And then this, for example, is another piece that sought to reference that. And as pivotal as this piece was for me, I felt like it lacked a specific grit to it. And so as the series progressed, I started thinking of how we as inhabitants of the city embody the city. And I always say that if you are native to a land, there is no possible way you will hurt the land. Because when the land hurts, you hurt. And I feel that every time I see footage of olive trees destroyed, of land being poisoned by the use of white phosphorus. I feel that very heavily. And the assault on the land is the assault on the body. And this was my way of trying to reconcile the city with the portrait, both of which have been of interest to me, and at very early experimentation. And then this is the painting that I consider to be my first breakthrough in the series, because going back to the idea of grit, I realized two things. I realized first that I can't work from any war zone, like, if I'm referencing, for example, the war in Ukraine, or I just can't, because I didn't understand the substance of their rubble. I understand the building materials that they used in Lebanon because I grew up with them. And so I understood what they looked like when they were in a pile of rubble. And so that was my first realization. My second realization was that I didn't want to illustrate or paint what a war zone looked like, but rather what it felt like. And so this was a first breakthrough for me in that respect. And it does something which a lot of my paintings do, which is that it shifts from a front perspective to an aerial perspective to a side view. I mean, I play a lot with perspective in the work. And so here you see yourself looking at downtown Beirut. And then on the side here, you see yourself looking down at the ground and seeing all the debris. at the same time. Um, this was very much the view that I saw from my balcony. And I remember thinking, oh, it's so far away, where in reality it really wasn't. But we always knew the proximity of the bombs, and we knew when we had to hide. And if you separate yourself from the horrific thing that this is, it looked actually quite beautiful. I remember times when I was running to the shelter at night, and I would look up at the night sky, and it looked like fireworks. Um, and I think that's what they refer to as the sublime. It's so awe-inspiring, and it's terrifying at the same time. And so paintings like this started coming out, and I was using a lot of collage material into the work at the time, but the majority of it was acrylic. There was a general absence of the figure in the work because I wanted, in a way, the haunted aftermath to come through. In this specific piece, there's a lot of wood embedded, and it was one of those pieces that I did where I thought, this is either really, really terrible or it's good. And I just finished it, and I put it aside, and I didn't look at it for about 6 months. And then when I looked at it again and I looked at the details, it even has some stitching of these ghost buildings. I thought, I think I like this. It's not bad. And this was another one of those images that I got the copyrights for when I went to the newspaper. These are compositions that, you can't make up. They're compositions that, again, are so horrifying. And it informed this drawing, which is actually a little bit three-dimensional. So I think I have a side view of it here. Again, it's on 300-pound watercolor paper. And the title is Once There Was, Once There Wasn't, which is taken from, storytelling that you tell children. In Arabic, we use that term, kan ya makan, which translates to once there was, once there wasn't. And so I just thought it was appropriate for this. This is again the school
Reem,
bus that,
can I
yes,
interrupt you for a second? I'm sorry. How large are some of these? Can you tell us an approximate?
sure,
Thank you.
absolutely. So this one is 22 by 30. And then this one is about 30 by 40 inches. This one's about 45 by 45. So, here we're working a little bit large, but not by today's standards for me. Those are all very small. But I was
Thank you.
working out of my kitchen gallery at the time in Honolulu, my kitchen studio, sorry. And so again, the school bus that continues to haunt me. Every once in a while, it makes a reappearance in my work. And so some more some more things that have informed the work. Of course, Islamic calligraphy, and we have Christian iconography, which this is specific to the Maronites of Lebanon, which is a Catholic sect which is loyal to Saint Maron, who was a Lebanese saint. And I've always thought about juxtaposing the two together because I wanted to highlight the irony or the frustration of fighting in the name of religion, which is supposed to be a peaceful thing. So here we see the Dormition of the Virgin Mary. You see the little Virgin sleeping here. And then you see an Islamic pattern drawn into this. And then, of course, the maze, which alludes to Kufic script, is also a maze that is indicative of a political situation that seems to be leading nowhere. And this is yet another example, but with fireworks on it. And the series is kind of ongoing. It has quite a bit of iterations, and you can see more of that on my website. And then to show some of my influences, this is the work of Iraqi artist Iyad al-Qadi, who is based in New York, is collected by the Met and a lot of big collections all over the world. Um, One of the nicest people in the world also. And I wanted to show the pietà here because it's been a theme, an ongoing theme, not only in my work, but in a lot of people's works. You think of the Virgin Mary and how she lost her son. And then you think of every single mother who has lost a child in the war. And so the Pietà has become such a powerful symbol in a lot of people's work. And so Iyad, I mean, this is oil on canvas, so skilled. This is another set of paintings of his, still on the easel. And of course, you know, here he's highlighting what these wars are all about, which is oil. So we can't talk about any of this without considering the Arab Spring, which which started in 2010, when this Tunisian civil inspector confiscated the weighing scales and every piece of fruit from a 26-year-old fruit vendor. He set himself on fire as a sign of protest. And let me just say, I mean, when the inspector took away the scales and the fruit, she took away that person's livelihood. And it was already a very, very desperate point for a lot of people. It took 2 weeks for the president of Tunisia to visit him in the hospital. And unfortunately, he died on January 4th, 2011. 10 days later, the president fled the country because there were mass riots. And then in the 2 weeks after the fruit vendor's death, 4 more Tunisians and a Mauritanian, 4 Egyptians set themselves on fire. And again, this is a very, very desperate act when a person gets to that point. January 18, 2011, Asma al-Mahfouz posted a video inviting all Egyptians to join her in Tahrir Square in Cairo. And Tahrir translates to liberation. So it became a very iconic event. And the movement was symbolized by the blue bra because one of the female protesters was so badly assaulted by anti-protest soldiers that they ripped her shirt off, therefore revealing a blue bra. And the artist Bahia Shahab took to the streets and started spray painting the blue bra everywhere. And so again, in Lebanon in 2019, there was a massive anti-government protest because there was a massive Ponzi scheme by the Lebanese government whereby they funneled out the Lebanese people's entire savings from their bank accounts into foreign accounts. This remains one of the most criminal events to have been done by a government, a foreign government, and they have not yet paid for it. And so anyone who had a Lebanese account to this day is not able to withdraw more than $200 a week or $100 a week in some cases because their money is being held hostage. And so this was in 2019. And then, of course, we had COVID in 2020. And then we had the port explosion. But to segue a little bit into what was happening in parallel, I mean, uh, the occupation and the conflict in Israel and Palestine has been ongoing since 1948, with the establishment of the state of Israel. And so these posters are done by two Israeli artists, and they were published in Milton Glaser's book Descent, which is an excellent book. And so, of course, the one on the right is titled Bloodbath, No Explanation Needed. And the one on the left, Childhood is Not Child's Play. Basically highlighting a quote by an Israeli Defense Force spokesman saying that it's sad when a child dies and hard as it is to say it, but he was killed according to regulations. And we continue to see that happening today. I will never forget a quote by Golda Meir that said, we will never forgive the Arabs for forcing us to kill their children. And so that speaks volumes there. And so when we see what's happening in Gaza today, when we see what's happening in Lebanon today, I feel like I am very much beyond the point of articulation, of thoughtful intellectualization of the situation, because I feel like I'm just so angry. And so, how do we as artists express that? Sometimes you just have to make marks. And I've been writing about agitation and how that manifests in mark making. And so this is one of the pieces that was recently exhibited at the University of Hawaiʻi Gallery. And it will soon be exhibited at Addison Ripley in a group show that's curated by Trevor Young. And so it's neon orange painted all around the sides. And when there's light on it, it feels like it's on fire in a way. And so these are, it's one piece. These are not separate pieces. This is one piece, and it's basically moments in time, in my thoughts, in my observations, in my state of being angry, and they manifest in the mark. And we are very lucky, actually, to have this outlet as painters. This is a piece by Anselm Kiefer titled Merkaba, which is one of my favorite pieces, and he remains one of my favorite painters, if you could call him a painter. And the Merkaba is this crystal, which in the sacred Kabbalah is a very important symbol. It is the crystal, and forgive me if anyone is well versed in Kabbalah and I'm not saying it quite right, please feel free to correct me. But this crystal holds the soul after death, and it is believed to, and it goes through several stops before it convenes with the divine. And so it's such a beautiful symbol of edification. And so when I was talking to my father about this, and he said, but that's the name of the tank that the Israelis used when they invaded Lebanon. And of course, when I did more research, I realized that they designed a specific tank that they called the Merkava, which is a sacred chariot, to them. And it was first used in the 1982 Lebanon war when they invaded Lebanon. And so I ended up doing this screen print of the Merkava tank that juxtaposed over it with interference paint, this very transparent Merkava crystal. And again, it's just playing with the duality, just like I juxtaposed Coptic or Maronite icons with Islamic motifs. So thinking of the August 4th explosion here, which I'm sure you've heard of, and if you haven't, on August 4th in 2020, there was a massive explosion in the port of Lebanon, which started with a fire breaking out in a port warehouse storing ammonium nitrate, which should never have been stored in a populated area. The first explosion sends a towering plume of smoke into the air. The second explosion triggers a ball of fire that rises, pulling air, water, vapor, and debris into the mushroom stem. The shock wave is ultimately what shattered so many windows and buildings, and it killed about 250 people, which, given the population of Beirut, is in comparison a small amount, because but it was after rush hour, and so that's what kind of saved everyone. The cloud was this color of nitrogen dioxide, and it was this orange iconic cloud that became such an icon in many people's works. This was the port before and after, and those are the photos by artist Joe Kisarwani. So you can see pre and post. And again, these are the silos, which became so iconic, and the silos after, which to this day have not been cleaned up because the site is still sectioned off for investigation. And so the artist Tahrid Darhous, has painted the silos over and over and over again, as did many Lebanese artists. She's one of my favorites. I really like her work. This was my painting on the Beirut port explosion. It is 15 feet wide. And this is a close-up. You could see the silos here. You could see spines here, which have a double meaning. They symbolize death, and they also symbolize our spineless politicians. You have the crows, you have the orange cloud, and then you have hands here that are symbolizing a plea for help. And then you have helping hands. Hands are another symbol in my work that repeatedly appear. And then all over, whether you see them or not, there are triangles which symbolize the glass. And so they're kind of all over, but it's interference paint, so you may or may not see them. And so the sound of Beirut was the sound of glass, basically, when that happened. So I wanted to show how impactful this event was. We have the iconography of the smoke, which shows up in the work over and over. This predates the explosion, but just so you know how much this has been with me, Song of this Dawn is about 30 by 40 inches, and it's also done with acrylic and graphite powder, and I poured boiling water over it, and it creates really interesting bunching of the acrylic paint. This is 12 by 16. It's a smaller piece, mostly done with fireworks and acrylic. And here again, sorry, I tend to jump around in timelines just because I find that to be more relevant. this is an image of a man collecting glass shards covering the carpets of a mosque in Beirut after the blast. This was a glass dump site in an area called Quarantina, where they had an estimated 25 tons of glass collected from Beirut. And this is a worker at a glassblowing factory that carries hand-blown water jugs from recycled shattered glass from the blast. I also had bought this beautiful bottle, which I would love to show you, but my cat broke it. So I can't show it to you. But it's a, you know, a lot of Lebanese have made, we have a long glass blowing tradition. So a lot of Lebanese have made wine glasses and bottles and plates and other things post-explosion. And so, again, this is another piece called Purgatory, drawing from Lebanon, drawing from Gaza. And here we have the M48 patent, which is a tank that was designed by the Americans, sold to Lebanon and Israel at the same time in the early 80s, and they were used against each other in warfare. So I just find that to be really mind-blowing. And then again, these are big shards of glass spatially coming out at the viewer. And again, the composition goes from a top view to a side view. And the blue 109 is, I had to include this because this is the bunker buster that it's an American designed missile. And this is the missile that levels a building in one just one missile will take down the whole building. And so another ongoing series is different iterations of the blue 109. And then, you know, we kind of circle back and we'll end with the portrait. For this one, I have the series called Moribund Outlivers. The artist and philosopher Walid Sadek says that no longer posthumous, the survivor is not an overliver who aimlessly questions the significance of his brute survival, but rather a witness who knows too much, carrying the weight of an unwelcome knowledge gathered from within war and crisis that challenges the official closure of the present to the unfinished past. What is this figure of a non-posthumous survivor? And what is the knowledge that it carries? How are we to reconceptualize the writing of history through this figure? And what are the images it continues to safeguard? The non-posthumous survivor, or the moribund outliver, as I call them, are people that have lived past their expiration dates. Many of us who survived the war have carried this burden with us. It is survivor's guilt, but it is so much more because a part of you really does die in these situations, and it does stay in your body for a very long time. And so here we see how the figure is embodying the city and vice versa. Of course, the title "We Live by Chance" comes from Mahmoud Darwish, the Palestinian poet. We refer to the city of Beirut as she, and so a lot of my monumental buildings have these figures in them. And the scale of this painting is 7 by 8 feet. And this brings me to my most recent painting. This is a horrible photograph, but this is 2 days old and is fresh off my wall. This is an 11-foot piece. This here you can see the figure, which again is she, the city of Beirut. We have the bulldozers here, and then we have the massive grave site from the 166 girls that were killed in Iran. And then we have this blue fissure that is my way of hoping against hope. So for scale, some details. And then I'm concluding with showing you our coffee cup, which is a very iconic coffee cup for us. And not just the shape, it's the pattern on it. And so this is something that you find in every single household. And the quote from Mahmoud Darwish, I want the aroma of coffee. I need 5 minutes. I want a 5-minute truce for the sake of coffee. And this is in his book, Memory for Forgetfulness, where the entire book is a love poem to coffee because us Lebanese take coffee very seriously. And he basically is pleading with the powers that be for a 5-minute truce so that he can go from his corridor where he is hiding into the kitchen so he can make himself a cup of coffee. And so I made this painting with these coffee cup symbols. And this is a painting of my grandfather's demolished house in South Lebanon. Called Memory for Forgetfulness. And in this piece, I have the 2 empty chairs, and I invite Mahmoud Darwish to come and have his cup of coffee. And my last slide is actually a very short video. This series is called The Living Bones. I started this series in 2021 after having visited Beirut and asking about my grandmother's grave. And I knew she was at the Presbyterian Church in downtown Beirut, but I was surprised to be told that the grave had been demolished during 1982 by an aerial bombardment by Israel. And so having lived in Hawaii for 17 years and taking into account the sacredness and the sanctity of the bones that should never be unearthed or disturbed, I've really carried that with me. And so it did something to me to realize that I can't access my grandmother's bones. And so this is my series where I attempt to piece my grandmother together. Thank you.
Reem, thank you so much. I mean, I learned so much, and I felt like I really got to understand your artwork a lot better, just with your narrative and and hearing your history. I had a question. I was actually thinking back to one of our earliest Art Clinic Online presenters, and I'm sure you know Cha Fen, who is an instructor, Lebanese artist. He's at George Mason. And I would recommend anyone else who's here to go back and take a look at his video as well. And he mentioned in his talk the kind of the role of the artist in terms of like changing perspectives, changing people's kind of view on things. And it kind of stuck with me, like, this kind of pressure or even responsibility that we have as artists to say something outside of just, still life or a pretty image or something on that. Can you kind of give us a little bit of like your perspective on what the role of an artist is in terms of change, I guess? I don't know how
Yes.
to say that.
Absolutely. I'm actually currently taking an incredible class online with the People's Forum in New York City called Artists Against Apartheid. The Artist Must Take Sides. And that's the question that keeps coming up over and over. And there are many answers to that question. Some people asked, well, what if I'm not really a political artist? How can I be a conduit for change? And the response to that, I thought, was a beautiful one from a recent speaker, where he said, you don't have to be a political artist in your paintings and drawings. It's your being. It's your sincerity. If this is who you are, if you're fighting for justice, if you believe in justice, that is equally important. We need every kind of artist. And I think of Helen Keller's quote, the highest result of education is tolerance. I think that the artist's role is to educate. And if we educate people, and sometimes the education is a confrontation, and you have to be open enough to receive it. But sometimes, like I know my work is not user friendly. It's not something people live with for the most part. And so, because it doesn't euphemize the situation. And so everybody can do it in their own way. But I do believe that I don't believe that we as human beings should choose not to engage in what's happening in the world. I think it's a total privilege for us, for those people who do. And I firmly am a believer that everybody should take a stand.
Thanks so much.
Of course.
Sorry, I'm feeling a little murder hornet in here. It's jumping at me. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, hi, this is amazing and fascinating, instructive, and beautiful and terrifying. And you made me think of so many injuries that governments, unfortunately, cause in people. Some of them are as graphic as the bombs, and others are financial bombs or torture. And you alluded to that too. It's amazing. And I have similar question to Jordan, but I won't ask it right now because you very eloquently responded to it, and it'll give me food for thought. I wanted to ask you how you make the images. Where do you get or do you design your masks and your stencils? I see the repetition that you talked about, and they're so beautiful. Do you design stencils and also the Arabic writing, which I love? I wish I had learned it. But do you do it in brush strokes? How do you do it?
A lot of things are free-handed. And then there are some stencils that are used, and you can see the evidence of spray paint or sponge painting. And so when I was looking for Islamic stencils, Islamic design stencils, I couldn't find any online. And so then I looked up Moroccan stencils and I found everything. They're literally still the same, but because for marketing purposes, it's easier to call it Moroccan than Islamic. And so I use some of those, and then sometimes I transfer images on, with the transfer paper. And sometimes I make up my own arabesques. So it just depends on the image.
What an interesting approach. Thank you so much.
Of
That's good.
course, of
Ellen
course.
has her hand up.
Yes, Ellen.
Um, I barely know where to start. I happen to be reading this remarkable new book by Molly Crabapple. Some of you might have heard that she's written a wonderful new book. It's re-examined the Bund, the history of Jewish rebellions going back to the 19th century. And she's an artist. And this journey with you, Reem, and I've taken quite a few wonderful journeys with Reem. So this is really amazing to me how this is very new and very beautifully connects the dots for me, and I hope for others about the way of each of us looking back, following your model of the disturbances in our life as we have encountered them, resolved them, rediscovered new disturbances. So I just want to make that observation. It's been very helpful. And I know that in your teaching, you've encouraged all of us to keep sketchbooks and also a morgue file. So I maybe will ask you to speak for the ACO community a little bit about a, a way of making that journey through sketchbooks and morgue files.
Sure. And sketchbooks didn't come easily for me, but it's because I hadn't found my entry point. And once I did, um, I felt like I had to share it with students because there's always this intimidation when it comes to sketchbooks. They feel like, oh, I have to make these beautiful sketches page after page. Where my sketchbooks are mostly writing and some sketches, a lot of collage work. And so they're a depository for ideas. And I just keep them going all the time. And my morgue file has merged into the sketchbook, but I still have a separate morgue file, which is a research file. This is a term that Austin Kleon came up with, and he took it from reporters who put ideas in a morgue file and they revive them when there's a slow news day. And so for me, the morgue file is a research file where everything goes, absolutely everything that you're interested in, ideas, pictures, swatches of fabric, favorite books, whatever you want to put in. It's a way for students to get to know who they are as individuals. And then I usually help them sift through these things, and I tend to find a common thread in their work. They don't always find a common thread, but as an outsider, I can help them through that. And I do think it's an important practice. We don't arrive at this practice just by chance. And I always tell people that this is research. This is ongoing. It's a lot of hard work. My professor in grad school emphasized the importance of spending time in the studio. You have to give the studio your time. And that that was the best thing ever for me because I worked throughout my pregnancy, which was horrible, throughout my daughter's childhood years, teaching, marriage, divorce, all of it. That was the one constant for me. And so you build a practice of research, you build a practice of searching, and that all informs the work.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do we have any other questions
Any
for
other
our artists
questions?
today?
Reem, have you ever encountered sort of pushback from anybody? And I know you quoted a lot of other artists, which is fantastic for me to learn. But do you ever have some pushback, like politically or educationally?
Yeah, When the genocide in Gaza started in 2023, I received some very unpleasant messages via social media from people I thought knew me fairly well, but because the whole argument that I'm being anti-Semitic and all that, which to me, I have to say, growing up in Lebanon, whenever the Israelis invaded, everybody talked about the Israelis invaded. Never once did I hear, and it may be different for other Lebanese, but never once did I hear that the Jews were invading, because religion never played a role in all of this for us. It was a foreign country invading us. And so the conflation of Zionism and Judaism does Jews a disservice. I'm firmly against that conflation. And so, yeah, I did receive, and for me, I took it as an opportunity to educate. And every time someone would attack me, and they were relentless. I said, would you like to come and have a cup of coffee with me and we can have a discussion? And no one took me up on that offer.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much. This is
Of
so
course.
inspirational. And
Thank
it
you.
translates to so many things, including our own country, in so
Yes.
many ways. Ouch. Thank you for blowing our minds.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, Reem, I just want to say thank you so much. That was really wonderful presentation. And like I think, or for me at least, and even like, knowing you and seeing your work and stuff, it was helpful to contextualize just parts of the pieces and like your own lineage, and like your development as an artist, but then also like things you're referencing in your pieces. And so I really appreciated like learning more and then seeing how that manifests in your work and in you yourself as well. Yeah, thank you, Reem. I thought that was really
Thank
wonderful.
you.
I
Thank
probably
you,
have questions,
Lindsay.
but I'll
Ellen
marinate
has
on them,
her
but I can
hand
ask you
up.
later. Yeah, sorry.
All right.
I
Ellen,
just want to take one quick second to, as not a faculty member or staff at the Washington Studio School, for those of you who are not familiar with the Washington Studio School, at S Street and Connecticut Avenue downtown, 6 blocks from the DuPont Circle Metro, the Washington Studio School is engaged not in really rich teaching that's gone on close to 40 years, I think, but there's also a tremendous amount of just fun going on at Washington Studio School. First Fridays, short and long classes. If you're interested in being a brief student or a long-term student, there are numerous ways you can access an on-ramp to an artistic experience to the school. Nobody's paid me for that announcement, but I really didn't want to lose the
Thank you,
opportunity
Ellen.
to share with any viewers.
We do have a mini fundraiser tonight if anyone is interested in coming to the school from 6:30 to 10:30. It's our sake spring fling. We have sake tasting lessons. We have sumie ink demo, and we have an 80s dance party. So lots of food and drinks for everyone. So anyway, thank you all so much for having me. And this was such a great discussion with you all. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you so much. And we'll meet up again in 2 weeks. Our artist is Tinam Valk and Elspeth, I don't know, I have a hard time saying her name. Sikorska is our host. She had an excellent, she was our last presenter of 25. So go back and take a look at her before our talk in 2 weeks. And then on June 6th, we have Shaheen Talshishkan, hosted by Valerie Thunberg. So I am so terrible with names, but I promise you a lot of great talks are up again in 2026. So we're almost our halfway point, but excited about our programming going forward. So thank you again to our artist today. Thank you, Reem. Thanks, Lindsay, for bringing her to our attention. So this has been great.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
great
Bye,
rest of your
everyone.
weekend, everyone.